welcome to the Sage Intacct for Not-for-Profits webinar. What we're going to do here is to take you through not only an overview of Sage Intacct itself, but also how it can be used specifically within the not-for-profit space, as there is some quite unique functionality that can be used. So just in terms of introductions, my name is Ivan Darmody. I look after the new sales side of things within Envisage. I started working in Sage about 2006, I think it was, when I started working in Sage, and I've been working with Sage products ever since in one capacity or another. I'll be joined by Kyle Moore, who is our product specialist, and he will be taking you through the actual presentation of the software itself. So in terms of the agenda, we're going to be doing a little bit of an introduction to ourselves, who we are as a company, then an overview of the product itself, very high level. Obviously, I don't want to steal any thunder or limelight from Kyle in his presentation. We'll go into the demonstration. We'll then cover off some of the more specific areas around not-for-profits and Sage Intacct and how it can work. And as I said, we will have a Q&A at the end. So again, feel free to drop any questions you may have into the box at the below. So who is Envisage? So we are part of the Knowledge Group. We are an ERP specialist organization based in both Dublin and Belfast. We specialize in ERP solutions for both customers in Ireland and the UK, and have been doing so for over 20 years. At Envisage, all we do is Sage ERP solutions. So we do both Sage 200 and Sage Intacct. Obviously, this morning, we're going to be covering off Sage Intacct specifically, I should say. So what is Sage Intacct? Obviously, quite a lot of people will be familiar with Sage as an organization, might not be overly familiar with Sage Intacct. I know some people will have used Sage 50 before, possibly even Sage 200 before. But again, as we are specialists in the ERP space, Sage Intacct is the latest player in that area from Sage's portfolio. So ultimately, for quite a while, Sage has been looking to fill the gap in its product portfolio for a cloud-native ERP solution. So that was achieved back in 2017, and I'll go into the timings a little later on. But ultimately, what they wanted to do was to have a solution that can really, I suppose, latch on to the current technologies that are available because of how it's actually written and developed. So one thing that you'll notice is, as we go through the presentation, Sage Intacct drives heavily on AI and machine learning. So the real key takeaways here is being able to use the software to manage the more routine manual processes that you might have to do on a daily basis that, quite simply in this day and age, computers should be able to do for us. And the idea behind this is, it's not to, I suppose, take away from your actual activities, it's to give you more time to do what's more fundamental in the business and being able to focus on growing the business by removing those more manual, repetitive transactions and processes that you currently do. So again, just a little bit of history there. Quite often people will think, oh, Sage Intacct is very new. Is it too new for me? It's new to the Sage portfolio, but it was actually written originally back in 1999. One thing that I think separates Intacct from quite a lot of other applications is, even back in 1999, the first line of code written for the application was written in the cloud. So quite often when you come across products today that are called cloud solutions or cloud software, they're actually on-premise products that have been ported into the cloud or might still be on-premise and have cloud connectivity. Whereas this with Sage Intacct is specifically completely cloud native, so there is no requirement for infrastructure. If you don't have servers, you don't have any IT people, they don't need to manage that. So again, written in 1999, it grew extensively throughout the US. It is a US product up until 2017. So again, this is when Sage had identified the requirement for a cloud native ERP and acquired Sage for somewhere in the region of, I think it was $800 million at the time. So best in class, best in breed is what Sage do, and they always have done as well. So since 2017, they have been porting it across and making it more specific to both the Irish and the UK markets. We, as Envisage, were the first Irish partner to take it on last year, and we've been selling it ever since. So to give you a bit of background, a little bit of kind of understanding of the software, because it is born in the cloud, it gives you the fundamental abilities to really use and harness the AI power and the ability to use AI and machine learning to, again, remove those manual processes. The easiest way to do that is to build a product around the core financials. So it's really going to be specific to yourselves and your own requirements as well. It's not an off-the-shelf product. It's not out of the box. You can build it as is specific to yourselves. So as you can see from up here, you have your core financials, which you would expect with any ERP solution. That's going to give you your general ledger, your AP, your AR, etc. And from there, Sage has given the ability to wrap packs around it for verticals and specifics. So ultimately what you can do is you can build ledgers around your core financials that would be specific for not-for-profits as well. So specific nominals, chart of accounts, etc. These have been pre-programmed in there just to give you that kind of step up and give you that base platform that you can build on. On top of that, you then have industry-specific solutions. So again, there's additional modules in there, which we will cover off later on in the presentation, specific for the likes of financial services, not-for-profits, SaaS companies, etc. If for whatever reason you have additional functionality requirements and you want to go outside of Sage's own stable, there is what is called Sage's Marketplace. So the MPP has been built over 20 years and is ultimately an ecosystem of companies who specifically develop software for Sage's platform ultimately. So you have an entire ecosystem of additional applications that can be integrated into Sage itself, into Intacct, so you can build out the functionality both from the core financials, from the vertical specific solutions, and then again from the marketplace as well. With cloud, quite often people do have some kind of concerns or hesitations, or they might not be 100% as to how would it fit for us. The beauty about the cloud is that you don't have to worry about maintaining the infrastructure. And quite often, a lot of the conversation I'm having at the moment with customers is that they don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the resources, they don't want to have to manage that. They're having downtime, their servers are crashing, and the software is bottoming out. So because it's hosted in Sage's environment, you're guaranteed 99.8%. That's the commitment that Sage provide. One of the great things as well is being able to grow with your business. Quite often when you do have servers, people find that they need to upgrade it, they've outgrown it, or it's outdated. You're allocated specific capacity within Sage's environment for your system. As you grow, they can then just allocate additional space to that. So it's not a case that you have to pay for upgrades and extra spaces and etc. The software and the actual ecosystem will actually grow with you as well. One of the most important things, I think, particularly as well, when you have a lot of governance being monitored, is your data and access to your data as well. The data backups, obviously, as important as they are, they can be missed. When it's manual, people might forget to do them. They might forget to take the USB stick home with them, whatever it may be. With cloud, obviously, every single night, there's a full backup. But not only that, not only is the software backed up every night, those backups are backed up to a different building entirely. So even if the data center, God forbid, was hit by a bolt of lightning, that backup is actually stored in a separate building in a completely different location. So your data is always secure, it's always safe, so much so that you can actually go back to any minute in time within 96 hours if necessary. So if there was any systems interruption, you can dial it back to any point within 96 hours, which gives you that confidence and that, I suppose that credibility that if you do need to go back and produce reports or any kind of information, you can do so. So, well, then a lot of the time what people ask us is, what is specific to this industry or this vertical that will be kind of different for other people as well? So what we do find is not being able to have the information to hand, not being able to have that, I suppose, reporting ability that you might not have currently at the moment. You might not have the, I suppose, the visibility when it comes to your audit trails. One of the key areas that we focus on is having that peace of mind that we cover off the compliance and governance aspects as well. A lot of the time in this particular industry, there's a lot of eyes on basically in terms of governance, compliance, and how you're actually complying with that. The audit trail also, above and beyond what's available in other applications, you do have a lot more detail that can be called upon if and when it's necessary. So in terms of that, I'm going to hand across to Mr. Kyle Moore, who's going to take you through the product presentation now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ivan, for taking us through that. Appreciate that. Hopefully we can all see my screen there that I'm sharing the Intacct demonstration slide. So my name's Kyle, and I've been working with the Sage products for the past 25 years. I have worked with many different organizations and types of organizations, local, national charities, and many other types of service and product-based companies and project-driven service companies as well. And today what I'm going to be showing you is some of the many benefits your company can get when implementing Sage Intacct as a non-profit, a non-for-profit. I'll be focusing on a few things. We'll be looking at multi-entities, looking at managements and what's thing called dimensions. We'll be looking at grant donation and tracking reporting, the ability to track financial and resources for grants and donations, looking at fund accounting, restricted and unrestricted accounts and money coming in from the like of donors and tracking that, looking at the reporting capabilities of the Intacct system, looking at the improved bank reconciliation using what's a thing called bank feeds to import transactions and to set up rules. Also looking at invoice authorization and workflows, allocation, spend management, and some other features that we can see in the system. But I think one of the first signs that the fact that you're outgrowing your current system for non-for-profit organizations is the inadequate visibility of data to make quick decisions based on data-driven information. And one of the ways Sage Intacct addresses this is with standard and customizable dashboards. So let's get into the product and we'll have a look at it and see how Sage Intacct can help you as a business. So whether you're a CFO, finance officer, department head, whether you're looking after the grants or whether you're looking after certain other roles within the system, there is dashboards that we can tailor to your particular needs. So the first one we can see here is a role-based dashboard for a CFO, Chief Financial Officer, which gives us a variety of functions and gives us a variety of information at our fingertips here. So the first thing we can see at the top of the screen is a thing called performance cards. And they're taking information from all different parts of the accounting system, and they're mashing them together to give you a headline bit of data. So as a CFO, I'm looking for the total revenue in the company, and I can see that it's 12.6 million this year, and it's up on the previous year. We can see the up arrow there giving us a very quick indication. And then go across, we're looking at expenditures or assets and things like that. Now, the performance cards, as well as giving you those headline bits of information, unlike other systems like Power BI, we're not having to run some sort of overnight update before we look at the figures. As we're drilling into these figures, they are live information that we can see. So if I wanted to give more detail on the total revenue, I can drop into the value, which then shows me the different income streams that we have. I can look at my contributions and drilling into the data that we have in the contributions. So these are our fundraising weekly receipts. And if I go into the credit amount there, we are then jumping, and we should be able to go straight into that. Yes, there we go. Sorry about that. So we're looking at our transactions here. Now, on the transactions, we can see that there are nominal accounts or GL accounts. There is funds, there are restrictions. So we've got restrictions, unrestricted funding. We've got departments, we've got sites, and we've got projects as well as the values that go to there. It's interesting to note at the bottom, we can also collaborate with these transactions. We can leave messages, audit points that we might want to share with auditors or anyone else looking at the transactions as well. And speaking of the audit trails, as Ivan said, we have a history of the transactions that we look at, and we can see when it was created, when it was posted, who posted it, if it was ever edited again. So again, the validity of the data and the audit trail is all there within the system, which we can then print or send to Excel or complete and go back to our dashboard again. So that's a performance card for a monetary value, which we can drill into. But there's also a lovely function within the performance cards and within the system of Intacct for looking at statistical information. We can use this for statistical journals. So we can go into the journal and we can look and see and drill down again to see how many records or clients that have been served. And if we look at this, we're talking about increases and decreases, not monetary value. So we can start to put things into place. How many people have we served? How many donors did we have? How many volunteers did we have on the system? And from that, we can then group that information together and use it in calculations from our revenue or from our expenses, etc. And we can look at things like program efficiency, how much we're bringing in, what our expenditure is, how many people we have served, how does that look as a percentage, etc. So our statistical journals are very important in the system, in the non-profit workspace. We can look and see here, there's a gift received. And then down in the dashboard here, we can see that we have graphs. We can see cash trends as some of the graphs that we have here. We can see revenue trend reports, and we can see also some things that we can need to do like approvals, etc. on the system. Now, if I just show you another slide to demonstrate these dimensions that we talked about, we have our general ledger accounts. We have our business partner dimensions, in other words, customers, suppliers, employees, warehouses. And then on the other side, we have organizational dimensions, things like entities, departments, classes. In the example that I showed you there for restrictions, for non-restricted and restricted funds, we can use that through the system. And also we have room to grow. So we have user definable dimensions that we can use on the system. So if I look at a legacy approach to chart of accounts, we might have one nominal code or general ledger code, 1500 for equipment. That can be then locations, departments, projects. So when we multiply that, we have 75 different codes that we will have in a general ledger structure. Whereas the Intacct using dimensions allows us to have this modern approach for a chart of accounts, have a flat balance sheet and a flat P&L, which then adds our statistical journals plus our dimensions, which equals a shorter and easier to manage route in our general ledger system. So if I was to go back just to our dashboard here, and we were to look at these dimensions, so if I just very quickly show you in the general ledger and our dimension structure here, we can see that in our case for this non-for-profit demo, we have funds that we're using as a dimension. We have restrictions that we're using as a dimension because we're needing that sort of information readily available to us. Now, how do we use that then? How do we get all that information? Well, these dashboards, as well as being very easy to customize them if you have allowed the access to do so, we can start to bring those filters in. So for instance, my revenue trend report is looking at my year to dates and it's looking at my different lines on the report. But if I just went in quickly to the edit button, what I can do as a user here is I can take this and very quickly go to my columns and also go to my actual column here and say, well, let's expand that, please. And let's expand it for our restrictions and set that and save and done. So now when we refresh this sheet, what we have is a revenue trend report. So it's just grabbing the different information that I've given it, and it's going away and looking for that. And now we have the report lines again, but we have now restrictions along the top. So we're seeing values for our permanently restricted, temporarily restricted, on all restrictions, etc. And we can again drill in to that sort of information. Now that's information that's very relevant to the like of a CFO, but what about the other parts of the organization that we can see in the system? Well, for instance, if we were to go to our dashboards again and look at our non-profit dashboards or look at our sample metrics dashboards, we can see that the performance cards and the reports change, and they change because we're wanting to look at this in particular for the like of my metrics here, how many people we served, what meals were served, how many volunteer hours and expenses we have, what is our cost per program that we're looking for, you know, what is our giving by restrictions, and thankfully our unrestricted givings is up, so that helps us when we're talking about our fundraising efficiencies. And our fundraising efficiencies could be put in the example of, you know, the total unrestricted fundraising expenses divided by the total unrestricted contributions, which would be sort of a fundraising efficiency model that some people would use. But again, we can scroll and we can look at different dashboards. So if fundraising was what I wanted, then I've got my fundraising efficiency dashboard. And we're now going into information specific to that fundraising, average donor givings, average gift amount, contributions from campaigns that we're running, how much money we're bringing in for those campaigns, where our contribution trends tend to be. So we're getting contributions, a lot of them in December here. So as an organization, as a manager, as a department head, as a CFO, I can look and see, well, how do we then bring our contributions up in the lower months, or resource the contributions that we seem to be higher towards the end of the year. Perhaps a lot of the money coming in to our organization is from grants. So we want to look at that. So again, if I look at my dashboards, we have a role-based dashboard for a grant manager. And that grant manager then can look at key indicators around the grants, how many grants we have received, what our revenue's been from them. There's the statistical journal of how many we've got, looking at our grant positions, what's been awarded, what revenue's been booked, etc. We can look at, this is one of the initiatives that we have, one of the projects or grants that we have on the system. So we're looking at that grant as a specific grant. And then we've got all of the different options within that. And we can see that, again, the color coding shows us that actually our operating budget was this, but we're over our operating budget. So it's very easy at a glance to see where our budgets are being exceeded, etc., on certain reports. There's also emails that can be sent to budget managers to say that they're coming up to particular budgets and over operating budgets. There are multiple budgets that we can have in the Intacct system as well. Okay, so that's hopefully giving you a bit of an understanding on dashboards and how they can be very useful to you as a company. But what happens if your business is more than one company? What happens if your company structure has more than one location, etc.? Well, in the Sage Intacct, how we deal with that is a thing called multi-entity accounting. And one of the great things about the multi-entity accounting that we see here in this slide is the fact that we can share information between the entities. So if I look at the entity 1 and entity 2, the information shared in the middle can be things like your chart of accounts. So you set up one chart of account that can be used for all of the different companies that you deal with, all of the different dimensions. But you can also share things like customers and vendors, suppliers, or they can be for shared, or they can be for a single entity. And also these dimensions that we're talking about can also be used in that space. So if I was to look at some of the consolidation here, so give me a second, just to grab that. So I look at my consolidation, I can show you my organizational view for this company. So we have the overall top level, and then we have different locations, and each location can have their own currency as well. And in fact, we can have sub-locations as well here as we look at the graph. This allows us to hold data in different places and share data as well. And we can run consolidations very quickly and easily just by clicking on the consolidation and consolidating that information from the system. So we've got all of that at our fingertips, really. We can see how to do that in the different strands. So if we were to look at sort of how that helps us as a business, well, if I nipped back to my dashboard, and we look at a role-based dashboard of a controller here, for instance, you can see up at the top, we have our software, and we're looking at the top level company. So if I'm looking at my dashboard, I can see, okay, my cash in hand is up. So I've got money here that I can use. But is that right for the whole way through our company? So if I started to look down the levels, so I can look at location 1, and it opens a new tab for us. It's a new entity. It's refreshing all of the information that we see on the screen. And we can see that for location 1, our cash in hand is up as well. But what happens if we look at Canada as a location? If we look at Canada as a location, we can see that the Canada location cash in hand is down. Now, so is the expenses, and the revenue seems to be up and the hours builds up. So what is happening here? And we can then make decisions upon what is happening depending on the information that we find here. Okay, so that's our different locations and how easily it is just to drop from one level to another, and how the information gets transferred as we go along. Okay, so many different sources, you're pulling those all together. So I'm sure you spend quite a lot of time, if you have different companies, different entities pulling spreadsheets together. This can do it all for you, just at the click of a button. So Sage Intacct, that in turn helps with your accuracy and your speed of your month ends, looking at top level information that we can see. There's also things like company checklists that can help us fulfill our auditing purposes, and can tick off, can say when it's been done, etc., and also give you great ideas on that and keeping following a particular schedule. Now, one of the other big things with any financial system is reporting. So if we take a look at some of the reporting information on the system, there is a lot of data we've seen in the dashboards, but also Intacct gives you a reporting power to move beyond the spreadsheets, having a number of different reporting tools in their reporting toolkit. The first one I'm going to show you in the reports is our financial reports. So our financial reports, really, the way I categorize these help us run your business. So if I was to drop down here to my balance sheet for profits, okay, you can see we have a quick start library as well. So there's a lot of predefined reports in here that we can use. But if I look at this particular one here, the non-for-profit, we can see that there's a report audience, so it's a board report. We can see also that there's a number of ways that we can run this report. So we can process it and store it for later. We can run it to the screen, which I'm just going to do now. And if we run that to the screen, what it'll do is it'll publish this on the screen. But because it's on the screen, it allows us also to drop down and go into a bit more detail. And it will also allow us to click through and show us the transactions that belong to that particular line in the system. So the like of showing where our cash is, showing what our receivable is, what our liabilities are, etc., we can see very clearly here. Now, one of the great things is that within the balance sheet here, within any of the financial reports, we can schedule these reports to run at a certain time and to send to a certain group of people. So I don't know how much time you would spend preparing things for board meetings, grabbing reports, running them, putting them together, sending them off on emails whenever people can be in different locations, different time zones, etc. And it can be an awful lot of time spent doing that. But how Sage Intacct addresses that is allowing you to schedule reports. So I can schedule this, for instance, this balance sheet report to maybe all the board members, to all the managers. I can ask them to do it individually or part of a group. I can say that it starts on a particular date and ends on a particular date. And actually, one of the nice things here is we can send the report following a general ledger close. So when we close our general ledger, the report can go out after that. So there's an awful lot of possibilities that we can do here to make your life simpler, automated routines, as Ivan had said. Now, if we look at maybe another report just in here, just when it comes to our restrictions, so we can run a restrictions report. And again, we can see here that we have our permanently restricted, unrestricted funds, restricted funds with donor restrictions, without donor restrictions that we have on the system here. And again, these can be emailed, they can be sent to Excel, they can print it out, or we can play about with the filters to get exactly what we want, the time frames, etc. We can do that. So that's our financial reports. The other reports that we have on the system, if I just look at that, is these interactive custom reports. So this is where we're trying to move beyond our spreadsheet. So again, we have a report library here. And if I just run the, let me see, if I run the AR invoices pivot table, I'll just run that interactively. And what it's doing is it's going away and getting all the information from the AR invoices, and it's going to publish that on the screen. So we can see that there's many different options that we can run all through our POs, or general ledger system, or ARs, or or APs, etc. And this has given us a list of customers down the left-hand side, but it's also given us the ability to look at the departments across the top. That's the way we've set this report up. But what I can do as well is I can drop into the totals here, and you can see we can drop in the years, the quarters, the months, even into the days of the month. So again, you're getting that drillable information as a report here, which you can export out of the system. So that is your interactive custom reports. Finally, in reports, we have the interactive visual explorer. And the interactive visual explorer, again, there's a visual board library here we have. And what I just want to do is want to look at some of the projects or grants to show you some of the information that we can store within these grants. So if I look at my interactive visual explorer, there's also postings for budgets. There's also converted orders, purchase orders, open items, etc. So all of the things that you would need, timesheet analysis as well. But if we look at this particular Visual Explorer report, again, it's building this up from the data that you have in here. It's not running from a predefined update at night. And along the top, we have our filter list. We have then our graphs or reports here on our storyboards along the bottom. So I'm interested in grants coming into the system. I can look at my project type here, and I can say, just give me the grants, please. And all of the information changes in front of me. So one of the health initiatives that we looked at previously there, you can see there's the health initiative, and we'll look at that a wee bit further in a second. But again, we can go into our projects, we can specify one particular project, particular locations, customers, etc. And then we can go into things like our details, our project details, all interactively running through on the system here, where we now have projects and we have a project manager assigned to them, statuses. These are all the grant projects. Again, you can see there's hours approved, so we can put hours against projects and grants, how much has been used, and then incomes, etc. And we have got a whole list of billable hours, for different types of labor cost analysis, geographical locations, all in that interactive report. Okay, so I hope you can see there that we can get a lot of information from the system in the way that we want to see it, and we can be interactive about that as well. I suppose when we talked about budgets there, it really would be good for me to just show you very quickly that we do have budgets in the system. We have our budget repository. We can have multiple budgets, which is really good because of different reports can look at different budgets on the system. We have a master budget here. And if I go in and look at the details, budget details, then I can look at the budgets for, again, here is one for that particular health grant. So I can budget against that as an individual and budget against projects and also departments, etc. So there's quite an extensive budget management system within this system. You can even export that out and to other systems as well, and do like the Sage Intacct planning, and then do what-if scenarios and forecasting scenarios as well. We talked about projects, so it would be only right to show you a wee look at project structures here. So you can see this health initiative one we can look at sub-projects within it, and we can view the project where we can store information about the project, the people responsible for it, additional info, whether the revenue is restricted, unrestricted, how long is it restricted for, any resources that are used, people that we need for the project, and we've got resource schedules, etc. here. We can look at summaries for expenditure, etc. We'll not look too deeply in this one because it looks like we're losing money in this particular grant, but we can see then Gantt charts, okay, of our different parts. So there's our main project, and there's our grant year 1, grant year 2, grant year 3. So we're tracking all of this information, and we can add tasks and customize that as well on the system. So hopefully that gives you a bit of analysis on the projects and how we can set them up as either projects or grants within the system. Another thing I want to show you that helps speed up things is our particular banks and bank reconciliations. When thinking of your company, if you think of how much detail is needed when money is coming in from different revenue streams, grants, donations, events, all of this sort of information that is coming in. There can be quite a lot of time spent ensuring that the money is reconciled correctly. And one of the ways we do that is through the bank rec. And whenever we look at our bank rec within the Sage Intacct, there is really in the cash management, we can look at credit cards, current accounts, bank transactions, but I'm looking at the bank reconciliation at the moment, and I'm going to reconcile this as a USD bank account. We've got our ending balance, etc. We can have attachments that, downloaded transactions that we can do. And within the bank reconciliation, there are three ways of reconciling. There's the slower manual matching of your transactions, where you look at your bank statement on another screen, you match off your transactions. Then we can go one step further and we can say, okay, well, my bank allows me to download my bank statements into a file. We'll do that. But the more common way now is using a thing called bank feeds. And bank feeds, as you can see there's bank feeds being set up on the system here. It allows us to bring transactions from your bank into Intacct, automatically match those transactions against your Intacct transactions, and also will allow us to post transactions such as bank fees, donations, standing orders, interest being paid, all automatically through the bank feeds download. And how it does that is from these things called applied rule sets. So if we looked at some other systems, they may have this simple rule set where you've got the matching is the amount, the document number, the reference, and the date. And Sage Intacct can do that. But it also can match many to one transactions. So in other words, when there's lots of transactions, lots of payments within Intacct, but only one lump sum in the bank, or the other way around. Or in this case, what we're saying is that if we see a bank fee coming in, so if the reference equals bank fee, then what we're going to do is post the journal to the bank fee nominal code or general ledger code. It's doing this all automatically. So when I go and continue on to my reconciliation, the transactions here are for the Intacct bank, and they're the ones that are left unmatched. But if I click over to my bank, you can see all of the ones that have been in my bank have been matched, and we can look at them via applying the function here, and you can see they're all matched off the system. So again, great, speeds things up, will allow you to do a lot of different functions on the system. It's common practice as well in businesses to have costings like rent and rates, and it's common practice to allocate those over different departments, funds, projects, any of those dimensions that we have talked about. And Sage Intacct utilizes two options. So there's the allocation by percentage across different locations or dimensions, but there's also a thing called dynamic allocations. And dynamic allocations will also take into consideration, they will also take into considerations things like monetary values, the size of a department, the amount of transactions coming in there, the value of maybe donations coming into that department. And we can use that to take an invoice or to take some sort of money and distribute that dynamically, automatically across the different departments. And as you're doing that, you have visibility of what it's doing. We can even see the basis for the calculations, and it will open up into Excel and show us that calculation. So these are calculations that you may spend quite a lot of time on Excel, downloading, sizes of donations, sizes of departments, how many people involved in that. Sage Intacct will do that for you when you're allocating the invoices. So again, another way of helping you and your organization. The other thing we have is we have invoice authorization and workflows. Again, this is very important. You're wanting a structure of your business. You're wanting to be able to do things in a certain way, and you're wanting visibility and responsibility and inclusion for those things. And what we can do within a number of the systems, I'm going to show you the purchase ordering, but we can do it in the sales ordering as well, is we have things like approval policies. So we can get people to approve via who their manager is, via what department it is, via lots of different, what general ledger code it may be. And we can combine that with the like of our transaction definitions. So we can we can build up how our business works. So in our business, what we're saying is that we start off with a purchase requisition. So somebody asks, can they order this particular item? Then we've got things like spend management, which we'll see in a second. But we've got purchase orders with spend management. We have vendor invoices then coming through. And you can see that this workflow is stepping us through all of this information. It's built on how we run our company and whether we do things like inventory purchase orders or just standard purchase orders for text items and things like that. So again, looking at that in a bit more detail, if I was to just look and combine a few things together, there's purchase order with spend management. So if I look at my purchase order, I can see here the order is placed. It's placed with this supplier. There's all the payment details that can come into it, the delivery details, our terms and conditions, and our items down here on our purchase order. So we can see that we have a particular general ledger code, purchase for fees. We have it going to a location and a department and a price. Now, as we are doing this, you can see here Penny has actually used the thing here, Emma, to say that this is using most of the budget. How do we know it's using most of the budget? Well, as we're processing and as we're putting the sales order on, the purchase order on, we can look at the insight, the spend insight. So this is looking at our budget for this GL account, for this location, this department, and it's saying there that our budget is that amount of money, 16,000. We have actually used this, but we are committing this amount into it. So therefore our funds available are the 5,171. So as we're putting this purchase order on, we can see the spend inside and we can figure out, can we afford to use this purchase order, or do we need to move money from somewhere else? Do we need to up the expenditure, the budget, etc., etc.? And that can not only be done on purchase orders, but it can also be done on the like of our general ledger and our journals. So in this case, we have a journal being put on for a bonus. We can show the spend insight of that bonus, and we can see that actually we're above our funds available are minus 1,000 here. So again, all of that information we can see throughout the system, and we can also, do that via our budgets and get that information as we're doing things and not after we have done them. So just finishing off, thanks for listening to me so intently. Finishing off, I just wanted to look at some sort of the advanced features on the system before we open up for some questions and answers. So some of the advanced features we have, again, Ivan touched on it here, but if we look at our company and our subscriptions here, we can look at our AI machine learning. So if we looked at a thing called GL Outlier, so GL Outlier is the system. What happens is the system will analyze your transactions historically. So look at how you've processed transactions in the past, and it will examine new entries, and it will highlight or stop entries that it thinks is incorrect. So what we can see here is that we have 2 journals, and those journals have been declined. They've been declined by the AI or the outlier. And what has happened as well, when they've been declined, they have sent an email to the person that was set up for that. And the email saying here, okay, there's the entries being declined. And we can even click here to view the journal entry, which will bring us into the screen that we're in now. If we wanted, we can edit that and push it through if it was declined for a wrong reason. But that's the system automatically generating those declines or stops or holds. But we also have within the system the fact that we can approve transactions as well. So we have an accountability for transactions coming in, and this can be set up on the system. And rather than the GL Outlier doing this, as part of our purchase order system or as part of our invoice system, we can also have approvals to allow people to approve or decline transactions on the system. Okay, so we can have that in. So again, with accountability at the processing point of view. Just finishing off then, we have a number of things called smart events, smart rules, and smart links. So for instance, if I was wanting to tailor my system to allow it to do things or not allow it to do things, I can set up what's called a smart rule. So in this case, what I've done is I have set up a rule to say that I have a holding company location. I don't want anybody posting journals to that holding company. So very easily, I've set up a smart rule. So if I tried to post this, the smart rule would say 300 is not valid for this transaction. So you're building up certain things that relate to your business and your business only and creating smart rules for that. We also have things like smart events. What happens if we add a new supplier? You know, can somebody get emailed to say that supplier's entered in before we start to use the supplier? If it's a new product, if it's a new grant, for instance, coming in, who needs to know about that grant? And they're called smart events that we can set up. And we've also things like smart links as well that allow us to go in. For instance, if we were to go to our customers, so if I was just to look at our accounts receivable into our customers, one of the smart links that I've set up here is just when I go down to the address. So I have a wee smart link for the map. So I can click on that and it shows me in Google Maps there where that particular customer or supplier or anything is in the system. Okay. So just to sum up, we have looked at how the purpose-built platforms, Intacct is a purpose-built platform for non-for-profits. I think we've looked at some of the grant and donation tracking and reporting. We've looked at the funding accounting, so the restrictions and the unrestrictions. We've looked at how we can use multiple entities. We've looked at some of the spend managements and the purchase authorizations, and we've also looked at the real-time reporting and dashboard. So I hope that has been useful to you. I hope you've found great use out of what has been covered. Obviously, we can't go into every minute detail, but we've spent quite a bit of time covering some of these main features on the system. So thank you very much for your time. Just hand it
Thanks
back
for
to
that,
you,
Phil.
Evan.
Yeah, no, that was very good. Appreciate that. So basically just going into the Q&A, we actually do have a number of questions. So we're going to try and cover them off. First one that's come through, Kyle, is specifically around the bank rec. And this might actually touch on the likes of machine learning and AI. So does the supplier name have to match exactly what is on Sage? So the example being given here is when you download the bank statement from Bank of Ireland, the actual narrative would have the words to before the supplier name. So to John Smith or to whatever. Will that kick out the matching process, or can that be overcome?
I think when you're talking about the matching of references and things, we can use the like or contains function. So we can say that, for instance, if we're doing you know, very often things like direct debits will have the first part of the reference is always the same, and then they might have a date on the end of it. So we can do things like contains or starts with or ends with, is my understanding.
So you can build rules around it ultimately.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Be able to do that.
There was another question then, and this might be more around configuration and implementation, but ultimately, question is, we'd implemented Sage Intacct 4 years ago. At the time, we didn't put in fund accounting. But the question is basically, how did you manage to do this? So how did you manage to structure it with general funds and restricted funds? And do you use dimensions? And also, is it possible for entries to default to a specific fund for basically for ease of use, or can it be overwritten? So the way that you have yours structured, was that something that you had done from the implementation and configuration side, or how did you kind of structure the general funds and the funds?
Well, hopefully you got a wee bit of an idea there that what we did for the like of the grants is we used the projects part of that, and there's different types of projects. One we set up for grants. For the restricted and unrestricted funds, we used a dimension. So that was a dimension in the system. Dimensions can be created if you're already using that sort of, if you're already using the system. there is customizable dimensions. Now, without going into the specifics of the actual implementation and what's there should be a way of being able to add a user-defined dimension if all the rest of the dimensions have been used, the standard ones. Again, if you're bringing projects, that brings another dimension into it as well. Is it possible to have the default entries for ease of use for funds? I'm not sure. It would be a case of having to probably look at that in a bit of detail to see, what transaction types we're talking about. Can we set up a fund connected to a user? There are these things like smart events, smart users, things like that. So we could possibly tailor the system to do something in that case. Yes.
Excellent. So we can do a little bit of digging on that and come back and answer that one more specifically. We have another one, so I'm just conscious of time. We have another one here as well, just around, can the system link into CRM or membership systems, such as Salesforce? Yeah. So Salesforce, I think fair to say that there's a pre-existing integration with Salesforce, probably going back to 2005, is that right?
Yep, that's correct, yeah.
And I know personally that we've done quite a bit of work with other systems. There's quite a few Irish companies that specialize in membership software to manage subscriptions and fees and memberships and whatnot. So I don't know, you obviously be a lot more au fait, Kyle, just in terms of the API. I know there's a very strong API that can be opened up and can link in with
there's a very strong API. The Sage Intacct was one of the first ones to link to the Salesforce particularly. So the information is seamlessly sent over to Salesforce and sent back. From creating quotes can be created in Salesforce and go through into the system. Dimensions as well, that we talked about, funds and restrictions, also can be made available in the Salesforce. So when you're doing quotes, when you're doing information there, you have the customers, the prices, the budgets and all can get passed into the Salesforce, for instance, as one CRM system. But we also have APIs that allow us to, again, integrate data into the Intacct system. We also have imports and exports as well for getting data into the system too. Okay, strong with Salesforce.
Yes, no, I mean, I think just because of the history there, it's over 20 odd years that both Intacct and Salesforce have been working together. So that in itself is quite powerful. We have another question there. Again, probably in and around the API, you might be able to shed some more light on it, but how is Intacct set up for interfacing from external systems? So again, similar to what we just touched on, both from individual and bulk transaction uploads. So bulk import of journals from a third-party system.
Yeah. So it starts off with the fact that there is templates to import the like of journals in the system. So that's the easy way of doing it. But when you're talking about interfacing between other systems, there is a great API that is available for that, which will pull in transactions linked to other systems, databases, and bring them in to Intacct, obviously using the restrictions of, things like it has to balance, there has to be these sort of key fields, etc. What we could do is, for the person that asked that question, we could get one of our developers who has been using the API integration to give you a shout on that one, just to go over in more detail. But certainly there is the API it can link, and we can do customizable links as well.
Excellent. Okay, there are a couple of other additional questions in there, probably more technical of nature, so we might actually go off and respond to them more directly, because it's a little bit more ones and zeros than anything else. So we can go into a little bit more detail offline and come back to the people who ask those questions directly. So guys, thank you very much for your time on that. I hope you found that beneficial. Again, we will be contacting everybody on the back of this and directly, just to see if there are any follow-up questions. Quite often after sessions like this, things pop into your mind that, oh, I should have thought about that, or I didn't think to ask that. So by all means, we will be in touch to see if there is any additional questions or follow-ons from that. So with that said, thank you very much for attending, and we hope to see you again soon.